Magic and Mystery in Tibet by Alexandra David-Neel. Psychic Sports, Chapter 6. This is the last part of Chapter 6. It's entitled Messages Sent on the Wind. Tibetan mystics are not talkative. Those of them who accept disciples teach them according to methods in which discourses have but little place. The disciples of the contemplative hermits seldom see their master, and only at intervals determined by the spiritual attainment and needs of the novice. A few months or a few years may elapse between these meetings, but in spite of their seeming aloofness, master and disciples, especially advanced disciples, do not lack means of communication when they deem it necessary. Telepathy is a branch of the Tibetan secret lore and seems in the lands of snow to play the part that wireless telegraphy has recently taken in the West. Yet while apparatus for wireless transmissions are, in Occidental countries, at the public's disposal, the subtler ways of sending messages on the wind remain the privilege of a small minority of adepts in that art in Tibet. Telepathy is not altogether a novelty to Westerners. Psychic research societies have more than once called attention to telepathic phenomena. These, however, usually seem to have occurred by chance. The author of the phenomenon was not aware of his part in it. Under some peculiar circumstances, he had set forth the mysterious waves that had reached at a greater or lesser distance a human receiver, but he had not done this knowingly and on purpose. On the other hand, the experiments made to transmit volitional telepathic messages have given doubtful results, for they could not be repeated successfully as often as desired. Things are different among Tibetans. They assert that telepathy is a science which can be learned, like any other science, by those who have proper teaching and are fit instruments to put the theory into practice. Various ways are mentioned for the acquisition of telepathic powers, though Tibetan adepts of secret lore are unanimous in ascribing the cause of the phenomena to an intense concentration of thought. One may remark that as far as telepathy has been observed and studied in Western countries, its cause has seemed identical with that discovered by Tibetans. Mystic teachers declare that mastery in telepathy requires a perfect command over the mind in order to produce at will the powerful one-pointedness of thought on which the phenomenon depends. The part of conscious receiver, always ready to vibrate at the subtle shock of the telepathic waves, is considered almost as difficult as that of the sender. To begin with, the intended receiver must have been tuned in quotes, with him from whom he especially expects messages. Now, volitional perfect concentration of mind on one single object until every other object vanishes from the field of consciousness is the basis of the Lama's spiritual training. And this training also includes psychic exercises that aim at developing the power of detecting the various currents of energy that are crossing each other in every direction. So some affirm that telepathy, as well as tumo and other kindred accomplishments, is a natural byproduct of the spiritual training, and consequently need not be studied separately. This also explains the power with which the great Gomchins and Dubchins are credited of communicating with their disciples, whatever may be the distance that separates them. However, some see the matter in another light, though they agree that proficiency in the spiritual training brings in its trained proficiency. Let me start the sentence again. I've lost it here. Though they agree that proficiency in the spiritual training brings in its trained proficiency in minor accomplishment, such as telepathy, they think that those who are not able to reach the high stages of the mystic path may rightly cultivate telepathy or other byproducts separately. Mystic masters agree that this, to a certain extent, and in fact a number of them, train their disciples in telepathy. A number of Tibetan anchorites have become able, without having undergone any special training, to catch the telepathic messages of their guru. This is commonly considered as proof of their great devotion to him. A few have spontaneously acquired the power to emit messages. For those who cultivate telepathy, the main lines of the training may be sketched as follows. First, it is necessary to go through all the practices devised to produce the trance of one-pointedness, the concentration of thought on a single object, and complete oblivion of all other things. The complementary practice, which consists of emptying the mind from all cogitations, establishing in it complete silence and blankness, must also be mastered. Then comes the analysis and discrimination of the various influences, which cause sudden, apparently inexplicable psychic or even physical sensations or moods of mind, such as abrupt feelings of joy, of melancholy, of fear, and also sudden memories of persons, things, or events, apparently unconnected with anything going on around one. When the pupil has exercised alone for a time, he may sit in meditation with his master in a silent and darkened room, the thoughts of both being concentrated on the same object. At the end of a given period, the student tells his teacher the phases of his meditation, and these are compared with those of the master. Concordances and discrepancies are noted. Now, stopping as far as he can the activity of his mind, emptying it of all ideas, reflections, and mental representations, the novice watches the thoughts which arise involuntarily and unexpectedly in him, without being apparently linked with any of his present preoccupations or feelings. He notes the subjective images which appear, and again at the end of the meditation, thoughts and images are made known to the Lama teacher, who sees whether or not they correspond to those he mentally suggested to his disciple. Then the master sends mental orders to his disciples, while the latter is at a short distance from him. If these are duly received and the student answers by acting accordingly, the exercise continues, the distance between the master and disciple being gradually increased. It is believed in Tibet that Dubchins are capable of reading the thoughts of others at will. The master being credited with such a power, it would be absurd to train anyone to send him telepathic messages. The very intention of sending them would be detected by him before the messages had actually been sent. Whether this power is real or not, the master is compelled to act as if he possessed it. Consequently, his disciples practice the exchange of telepathic messages among themselves. Two novices, or a number of them, associate for that purpose under their teacher's supervision, and the training is very much like what is described above. Novices test their progress in dispatching unexpected telepathic messages to one another at a time when the person designated is likely to be busy and not thinking about receiving communications. They also try to convey messages to people with whom they have never been connected through through training in common, and who know nothing about telepathy. Some make experiments with animals. Years are devoted to these practices. It is impossible to guess how many students who pursue this study really obtain results from it. Whatever may be the fruits they reap, the most worshipful among mystic teachers do not encourage this kind of exertion. The efforts made to acquire supernatural powers are considered by these masters as uninteresting, childish sports. It seems proved that great contemplative anchorites are able to communicate by telepathy with their disciples, and some even say, excuse me, with any sentient being, but that power, as already stated, is considered as a mere byproduct of deep insight into psychic laws and of spiritual perfection. It is said that when, on account of enlightenment, it is said that when, on account of the enlightenment acquired through various contemplative meditations, one has ceased to consider oneself and others as entirely distinct entities, devoid of points of contact, then telepathy is easily practiced. The discovery, during prolonged introspections of these points of contact, leads to a sphere in which delimited beings vanish and only continual exchanges are perceived. These are psychic and mystic experiences which words cannot describe. Whatever may be the share of truth or fancy in these theories, I prefer to avoid discussing them. One thing I may say, however, is that communications from mystic masters to their disciples through gross material means such as letters falling from the ceiling or epistles one finds under one's pillow are unknown in Lamaist mystic circles. When questions regarding such facts are put to contemplative hermits, erudite lamas, or high Lamaist dignitaries, they can hardly believe that the inquirer is in earnest and not an irreverent joker. I remember the amusing reflection of a lama from Tashilhunpo when I told him that some filings, Philings, believed in such ways of communicating with the departed ones or even with Tibetan mystic teachers, and these are the men who have conquered India, he exclaimed, utterly amazed at such simplicity in these otherwise redoubtable Englishmen. Relying on observations which extend over a large number of years, I shall venture to say that Tibet seems to offer peculiarly favorable conditions for telepathy as well as for psychic phenomena in general. What are exactly these conditions? It would be presumptuous to attempt defining them, while the very nature of psychic phenomena is still so mysterious. Maybe the very high level of the country is helpful. Perhaps we may also take into account the great silence in which the country is bathed, that extraordinary silence of which, if I dared to use so strange an expression, I would say that it is heard above the loudest voices of the most furiously roaring torrents. Again, solitude might be reckoned with, the absence of big crowds whose mental activity creates many whirlpools of psychic energy which trouble the ether, and perhaps the placidity of the Tibetans whose minds are not filled like ours with cares and cogitations is another of these favorable conditions. Whatever may be the causes at work, telepathic transmissions, either conscious or unconscious, seem to occur rather frequently in Tibet. Regarding my own personal experience, I am certain that I did receive I am certain that I did receive, on certain occasions, telepathic messages from lamas under whom I had practiced mental or psychic training. It may even be that the number of these messages has been larger than I suspect. However, I have only retained a few cases in which the Lama afterward inquired if I had understood what he meant to tell me at the given time. Beside communications regarding spiritual matters, which may not be entirely due to telepathy, but to a certain identity in the trend of thoughts between a master and a pupil, I may relate two incidents of an entirely different kind. One of them happened in the Danshin River Valley. Danshin is spelled Dainsshin. During my voyage to Lhasa, the Lama who produced what seemed to me a characteristic telepathic transmission belonged to the monastery of Chozdong, CHO with 2 dots over it, SDZONG. Yongden and I had spent the night in the open, sleeping in a ditch dug by the waters during successive rainy seasons, but for the moment dry and hardened by the frost. The lack of fuel had compelled us to start our daily tramp without drinking our usual hot buttered tea. So, hungry and thirsty, we walked till about noon, when we saw, seated on his saddle carpet near the road, a Lama of respectable appearance who was finishing his midday meal. With him were 3 young trapas, or distinguished mien, M-I-E-N, who looked more like disciples accompanying their master than common servants. 4 fettered horses were trying to graze on some dry grass near the group. The travelers carried a bundle of wood with them and kindled a fire. A teapot was still steaming on the embers. As befitted our assumed condition of beggarly pilgrims, we respectfully saluted the Lama. Most likely the desire that the sight of the teapot awakened in us could be read on our faces. The Lama muttered, I can't read this word, Ningji, N-I-N-G-J-E. And then there's some sort of an accent over the N. Let me see, that's used in Spanish, I think. Sort of a curvy line. Let's see, what's it called? Can't remember what it's called. And aloud told us to sit down and bring out our bowls for tea and sampa, Tsampa. The trapa poured the remaining tea in our bowls, placed a bag of tsampa near us, and went to help his companions, who had begun to saddle the beasts and make ready to start. Then one of the horses suddenly took fright and ran away. This is a common occurrence, and a man went after the animal with a rope. The Lama was not talkative. He looked at the horse that ran in the direction of a hamlet and said nothing. We continued to eat silently. Then I noticed an empty wooden pot besmeared with curd and suggested that the Lama had got the curd from a farm, which I could see at some distance down the road. The diet of daily tsampa without any vegetables proved rather trying for my stomach, and I availed myself of all opportunities to get milk food. I whispered in Yongden's ear, "When the Lama is gone, you shall go to the farm and ask for a little curd." Though I had spoken very low, and we were not seated very near the Lama, he appeared to have heard my words. He cast a searching glance at me and again uttered sotto voce. Then he turned his head in the direction where the horse had run away. The animal had not gone far, but but was apparently in a playful mood and did not permit the trapper to capture it easily. At last it let him throw the rope around its neck and followed him quietly. The Lama remained motionless, gazing fixedly at the man who advanced towards us. Suddenly the latter stopped, looked around, and went to a boulder nearby, where he tied his horse. Then he retraced his steps a little way, and leaving the road, walked back to the farm. After a while, I saw him come back to his horse, carrying something. When he reached us, the something turned out to be a wooden pot full of curd. He did not give it to the Lama, but held it in his hand, looking interrogatively at his master, as if saying, "Was that what you wanted? What am I to do with this curd?" To this unspoken question, the Lama answered by an affirmative nod and told the trapper to give me the curd. The second incident, which I will relate, did not occur in Tibet itself, but on the borderland territory that has been annexed to the Chinese provinces of Sichuan and Gansu. At the skirt of the immense primeval forest that extends from Tagan, Tagan, to the Kunka Pass, Kunka, 6 travelers had joined my small party. The region is known as being haunted by daring Tibetan robbers, and those who must cross it look for opportunities of forming as large and as well-armed a company as possible. 5 of my new companions were Chinese traders. The 6th was a Bonpo Nagspa, a tall man whose long hair, wrapped in a piece of red material, formed a voluminous turban. Anxious to glean anything I could regarding the religion of the country, I invited the man to share our meals in order to find an opportunity of chatting with him. I learned that he was going to join his master, a Bonpo magician, who was performing a great dub-tab in the neighboring hill. The object of this rite was to coerce a malignant demon who habitually harmed one of the small tribes which live in that region. After diplomatic preambles, I expressed my desire of paying a visit to the magician, but his disciple declared the thing utterly impossible. His master must not be disturbed until the full lunar month necessary to perform the rite. I understood that it was useless to argue with him, but I planned to follow him when he parted with us after crossing the path. If I succeeded in coming unexpectedly upon the magician, I might perhaps have a glimpse at him in his magic circle. Consequently, I ordered my servants to keep good watch on the Nagspa so that he could not leave us unnoticed. Probably they spake too loudly amongst themselves about the matter. The Nagspa saw through the trick I intended playing on his guru and told me that it was no use attempting it. I replied that I did not harbor any evil intention against his master, but only wanted to have a talk with him for the sake of enlightenment. I also commanded my servants to keep a still closer watch on our companion. The Nagspa could not but be aware that he had become a prisoner, but as he had also understood that no harm would be done to him and that he was well fed, a thing to which Tibetans are keenly alive, he took his adventure good-humoredly. "Do not fear that I shall run away," he said to me. "You may bind me with ropes if it pleases you. I need not go ahead to inform my master of your coming. He already knows all about it." And then there's a Tibetan sentence here which I can't read, but in brackets it says, "I have sent a message on the wind." Nagspas are in the habit of boasting of so many and such various miraculous powers that I did not pay more attention to his words than to those of colleagues in the black art. This time I was wrong. When we had crossed the pass, we entered a region of pasture land. Robbers are not much to be feared on these tablelands. The Chinese traders who had clung to us day and night while in the forest recovered their assurance and took leave. I still intended to follow the Nagspa when a troop numbering 6 riders emerged from an undulation of the ground. They rode at full speed towards me, then dismounted, saluted, offered Khagtags, Kha-tags, and it says in brackets, complimentary scarves, and a present of butter. After the polite demonstrations were ended, an elderly man told me that the great Bonpo Nagspa had sent them and begged me to renounce my intention of visiting him, for no one but an initiated disciple ought to approach the place where he had built his secret magic Kylkor, Kylkhor. I had to give up my plan. The Nagspa, it seemed, had really informed his master by sending a message on the wind. To persist would have been useless. Even if, in spite of the proof of this strange ability the disciple had given me, I still doubted. That the master's occult power was strong enough to prevent my progress. I could not ignore the sturdy, armed hillmen that surrounded me. They were most respectful and certainly meant to be as pleasant as they could be, but their attitude might change if my obstinacy should jeopardize the success of a rite that interested the whole tribe. So I gave a complimentary scarf and some silver to the Nagspa to be presented to his master. I congratulated the Tibetans on their good luck in having secured the service of a first-rate magician, and we parted on friendly terms. Visual telepathy seems also to be known in Tibet. If we could rely on the stories told about the famous lamas by Tibetans, we would find in them many examples of such phenomena. But truth and fiction mingle freely in these tales, and one feels rather inclined to doubt than give credence to any specially unusual event. However, there exist men today who affirm that they have beheld visions transmitted to them by a kind of telepathic process. These are quite different from the images we see in dreams. Sometimes the vision appears during a period of meditation, but at other times it seems while the observer is busy about his ordinary affairs. A lama, Tsipa, T-S-I-P-A, told me, there's a footnote here for Tsipa, it says astrologer. Okay, a lama astrologer told me that once, when taking his meal, he saw a gyud. And then there's another footnote, and it says, this is a fellow of a college of magic ritual. A friend of his whom he had not met for several years. The gyud lama stood at the door of his house side by side with a young trapa who carried a small load on his back as if ready to start on a journey. The traveler bowed his farewell at the feet of the lama, and then the latter smilingly spoke a few words and pointed with his hand towards the north. The trapa turned in that direction and bowed down again thrice. As he got up, he arranged his monastic toga more tidily, and the Sipa, T-S-I-P-A, noticed that it was badly torn at one end. After this, the vision vanished. A few weeks later, the same young man whom he had seen arrived from the Gyud, G-Y-U-D Lama, who wished him to be taught some astrological calculations. The Trapa related that when taking leave of his former teacher, after he bowed to him, the latter said, "As you are now going to your new master, you had better bow down to him also." And he had pointed towards the north. The Tsupas dwelling being situated in that direction. The Lama also noticed the large rent in his pupil's toga, which he had apparently already seen in his vision. I inquired if the Gyud Lama, the astrologer Lama, had meant to convey to his friend the news that he was sending him the young Trapa. No answer could be given to my question because the event was recent, and since it happened that Tsupa had no opportunities of dispatching a message to the astrologer Lama. I may add that average Tibetans are much less eager than we are to investigate psychic phenomena. They take them as certainly uncommon, but not altogether extraordinary occurrences. They have no fixed ideas about the laws of nature or what is possible and impossible to be disturbed by such phenomena. Educated or ignorant, all implicitly admit that everything is possible to him who knows the way of doing it, and consequently, supernormal feats do not, as a rule, awaken any special emotion beyond admiration for the competent wonder worker. And that concludes the chapter on psychic sports. Now, the next chapter is chapter 7, and it's entitled Mystic Theories and Spiritual Training. And I hope you'll join me for that one. I found this last chapter very interesting indeed. And I personally have had some experiences with telepathy, so I can vouch for it. I mean, I haven't been to Tibet or anything, but in my spiritual practices and teachings, yes, indeed. I mean, this is possible. So I hope you have an open mind to it, and it's fun to experiment with. Till soon.